And this time we're in the Music City, my hometown. And we're here with ESPN's own Teron Davenport. Not only does he do ESPN in terms of reporting, writing, he has talking with TV. I mean, he had Mel Kiper Jr. and Chris Sanders on there today. I mean, does it get better than that in Nashville? Does it? Really? But you know, thanks for coming on, Teron, man. I appreciate it, you coming on, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, for sure, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, of course, we're in Nashville. We're going to talk Titans, of course, obviously. And with the Tennessee Titans, of course, they had a successful season, 11-5. A lot of people were talking about them at one point across the NFL. Then playoffs happen. They have a little stumble. Towards the end of the season. Playoffs hit. They lose to the Ravens at home. Season over. Not necessarily the ending that the Titans wanted, but you know, definitely a good season in terms of record wise and some achievements offensively. Almost had two 1,000-yard receivers and a 2,000-yard running back. Almost, just for about 16 yards, I believe, off from Corey Davis.
Yeah, yeah. 16 yards away. He was very close. I mean, that was a tough break for them. He had the almost 1,000, and he missed two games. So I think you have to take that into account. But I think they found balance in offense. Started off really strong, 5-0, and then they had a couple hiccups there. And it's the Steelers and the Bengals game. Those were bad outings, and you factor in the Browns too. It was a good season for them though, because finally they went from that 9-7 mark to 11-5, won the first AFC South Division title for the franchise since 2008. So definitely some things that Titans fans and the organization itself should hang its hat on.
Definitely, definitely. Speaking of that offense, there was one guy leading this offense. We're not talking about a player. We're talking about Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith definitely was a guy that created great matchups for this offense. Everyone talks about Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry in his own right is great, and he had a great season. But Arthur Smith, what's not talked about enough is the matchups he created with the motions and things like that all season long to make this offense a high-flying offense as well as an offense that was effective on the ground. But this offseason, of course, he accepted a head coaching job with the Atlanta Falcons, and he will be coaching that team now. And, of course, former defensive coordinator Dean Pease is coming out of retirement to be his defensive coordinator, which that's another thing to talk about with the defense, but we'll get there. But with Arthur Smith now gone, of course, you have a new offensive coordinator. That would be Mr. Todd Downing, tight ends coach. So now he's stepping in with this offense and charged with leading it. I mean, what are your thoughts on him as the replacement for Arthur Smith?
Well, to be honest with you, it's all a goal to maintain and establish continuity. That's really the main reason why they're going to go ahead and have Todd Downing lead the offense. Terminology, they wanted to make sure that was very similar. So these guys didn't have to learn a whole new program and have to, worry about thinking before they're playing. Like if you are able to just do things reaction-wise and just go, it's a lot easier and more productive than it is to think, okay, you know what, it's Tiger Scat X7, Y6, something else. And you're like, okay, all that means I have to run this. If you know exactly what it is, you would just do it. That's the long story short version of it. So I think that was a good thing. Todd Downing, you have to remember the guy has previous experience as a coordinator. Obviously, in Oakland in 2017, it didn't go that well. But I think you have to look at his connection to Kevin Stefanski and just having the understanding that if I'm calling an offense for a defensive-minded head coach that wants to play complementary football, and I have number 22 in the backfield. I have 17 and 11 as well. I need to make sure that I absolutely go for balance, and that's something that he learned from being there in Minnesota, right? Because that's something that John D. Filippo got fired for, and Kevin Stefanski came in and did that, and he sprung that into a head coaching job with the Browns.
Speaking of Todd Downing as a offensive coordinator, his first stint as an offensive coordinator was with Oakland, and that was 2017. And he had Derek Carr, Marshawn Lynch was back there, the Oakland Raiders. It was a little rough for him. I mean, they were 23rd and finished 23rd in points, 25th in rushing yards. A little rough for him. So definitely with being with Stefanski, maybe this time around he's kind of learned a few things and will be able to do better offensively in terms of as a coordinator. Now he is a tight ends coach, so do you think that more tight ends will be involved? Do you think Jonnu Smith, if he does come back, I believe he's a free agent this offseason. Do you believe Jonnu Smith will be more involved and the tight ends will be even more involved in this offense?
Well, you have to remember, Arthur Smith was the tight end coach too before he took over as the OC. So, I mean, I would think that he would be more involved. Well, just not more involved. I can't say that. I would think that he would continue to be involved. And granted, the targets, I think it was only 65 targets for Jonnu Smith last year. He had 41 receptions. But here's the thing. Basically, 1 out of every 5 times that man touched the football, it was a touchdown. He had 8 touchdowns. You look in the red zone, he was the guy in the red zone. That's who they went to very often. He and Ryan Tannehill have that connection. So I don't know that it's all on the coordinator as much as it is on the quarterback to get the football to him, because you could call a play and a quarterback will be required to go through his reads. And if he doesn't see that guy is open and throw him the football, that's not on the coordinator, it's on the quarterback. So I think it goes beyond just Todd Downing. I think Jonnu Smith will return. He spoke on Sirius XM NFL radio, and he called Todd Downing one of the best offensive minds he's ever been around. So that right there pretty much tells it. And then if you go back to the Minnesota days, Kyle Rudolph also said that Todd Downing was one of the a very sharp offensive mind and has a very astute understanding of the passing game. But in addition to that, he helped him out a lot as far as knowing how to block and be effective in the running game. That goes back to what I said before about the balance.
Now, for those that don't know who Todd Downing is, I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't. I'm going to show you a picture of who he is. Here he is right there. So now everyone can put a face with the name, because a lot of people don't know who he is, unfortunately. But hopefully, for him, in terms of his stature and rise in the NFL, plenty of people will know who he is for good things. And plenty of Titans fans will know who he is for good things. Now, when it comes to the Titans, offensively, they did well this year. They were very explosive offensively, running the football, passing the football. I mean, they could do anything you wanted them to do. Unfortunately, defensively, they weren't quite as explosive and complete a defense. The leading sack guy for the Titans with 4.5 sacks this year, I believe, and it was Harold Landry III, and it just seemed like they just could not get it all together going on at the same time. They had very opportunistic to start the season, but as the season went on, those opportunities kind of didn't happen as much. Now going into the off season, you would think potentially they would go outside to bring someone in, but they actually promoted the linebackers coach, Shane Bowen, to the defensive coordinator. I mean, what are your thoughts on just how the defense was and them promoting the linebacker coach to be the head coach? The defensive coordinator.
It's not really a promotion. That's the role that he had last year. It's just he didn't have the title. So basically, they just put a title on his job that he was already doing. And I don't necessarily think that it was mandatory to go outside of the building to bring in another new coordinator, because when you do that, you have to have a new system installed. Everybody points to Dean Pease as the man, and granted, he is the man. But that first year, they weren't an outstanding defensive team. They were solid, but they weren't outstanding like they were the second year. I think you really have to look at just the ability to settle into a scheme and be comfortable with it, and actually be able to, once again, as I said with the offense, understand it and know it and play fast, not have to think. And that's something I think happened a lot to Rashaan Evans. It's something I know happened to Kevin Byard, and that's why you didn't get the same results as these guys have, given in the past. So I don't really have an issue, and I don't think there should be an issue with Shane Bowen getting the defensive coordinator title. I think you have to understand he's a young coach, no OTAs, no mini camps to install the scheme. Most coordinators are going to have a little bit of an issue with that. But everyone looks at the bad things. Obviously the third down ratio there, we're allowing teams to convert on, I think it was like 56% or something along those lines. The red zone touchdowns allowed, that was terrible. The sacks, you mentioned 4.5 sacks by Landry, or 19 sacks as a group. That's tied for the third worst in the history of football since sacks have been recorded as far as teams making the playoffs. So those were bad, but they ranked seventh in takeaways. They had the most interceptions, 15, that the organization has had since, I believe it was 2011. So there are some positives. And my question is this: if they draw up an elaborate blitz scheme, right? And let's say they dial up the blitz with Desmond King coming off the edge, and he gets there and has Deshaun Watson dead to rights, and Watson escapes it. Is that Shane Bowen's fault, or is that Desmond King's fault? We're too quick to look at the coordinator and the coaches and not look at the player. The players are the guys that are out there. So I think that's what you have to look at. And it's not the end of the world that he was named defensive coordinator.
Gotcha. And and you definitely bring up a very good point. It's on the players to make the plays. The coach can only put the player in a great position. He can't make the play for them. I got a question from Cortland Griffin. He said, Mike Teron, do you put more on the injuries or the actual scheme itself? I'm going to defer to you on that one.
Well, I think it's a combination, because, I just sat here and said all that about Shane Bowen, but make no mistake about it, there were flaws in that scheme. You know what I mean? There's no reason why it should be 3rd and 6 and you have corners playing 10 yards off the ball. And it took them too long to realize that that's not a good look. It took them too long to realize that zone coverage was not working. And you have tight ends running through zone and being able to get the first downs. Look at the Steelers game. What's his name? Ebron. It was like 3rd and 18, a 22-yard gain. He just skated right through the zone to the other side of the field, caught it, and got the first down. Those are things that can't happen. So it's a combination. The injuries, obviously, Clowney going down, Derek Roberson not being available, that didn't help them one bit. But I don't think you could use that as an excuse. They still have to somehow manage to make things happen, right? You bring guys in. Brooks Reed, they brought him in off of the street, and he ended up, he got you 3 sacks. Brooks Reed, we're talking about. So, I think you have to get the horses in there to run the race. I've used that term and that phrase over and over again, and that's John Robinson this summer or spring, what have you, through the draft and through free agency. It's imperative that they add difference makers.
Definitely. I mean, you can't leave your corners out there and your secondary out there without a pass rush. I definitely agree there, and it just it'll be interesting to see what the Titans do and what changes they can make or what things they can do just as a defense to be better next year. And definitely got to give the new defensive coordinator a chance. You can't necessarily just throw it all out the window because it didn't work just that fast. But one question, with the new title he's getting, Does that give him? Do you see some more changes in terms of the scheme happening? Of course, he'll have an all season this year. But do you see more changes in the scheme, or more things, or more of him having control of the defense?
No, because as I said, this is what he did last year. There really isn't a change except for the sign outside his door. They're going to knock out outside linebackers coach and insert defensive coordinator. That's the difference. And now you have his name slips my mind. Who he was the assistant special teams coach. He's now becoming the outside linebackers coach. And the thing is with that, he's worked with them in the past. I can't believe his name slips my mind, but he's worked with the outside linebackers in the past. He did so in 18 and 19. So if anything, Shane Bowen will be pulled away from that and be able to kind of roam a little bit more and get to each of the groups. But I'll say this, in talking to him every Thursday during the season, he was well in tune with what was going on in each of the position groups. So I don't think anything has changed as far as scheme. I mean, they may mix in a few things here or there, but for the most part, I think it's going to be consistent. I think it should be more effective because they're going to have the necessary players. Losing Jarrell Casey hurt a lot because he was that shoot guy when they would run those games up front, and that was one of the ways that they were able to consistently get pressure, by those twists and those type of things. So that's something that they're going to have to establish and find somebody to be able to help out there.
Yeah, definitely. And we got a question here, but I think you pretty much answered that already. Asking about Vrabel taking a back seat and Bowen being the coach. That was a lot of talk this year was about Vrabel being the guy running the defense. Now, what you just told me, basically Bowen was running the defense, but I guess basically Vrabel was taking all the darts that was being thrown out there in terms of the defensive performance.
That's essentially what it was. But even Vrabel himself said that Shane Bowen was calling the plays. He said that, it was Shane Bowen's defense. He did want to be involved, which understandably so. That's his background, defense. So he was involved. Don't get it twisted. But yeah, that was Shane Bowen's show, and I think ultimately it came down to scheme not being executed properly, scheme not being as good as it should have been as well. As far as the timeliness of the calls, that's one thing with Dean Pease that he did so great was know when to dial up those blitzes, and he even said it in his press conference, opening it up with the Falcons. He said we want to be a defense that it doesn't matter who's on the field, any one of them are capable of blitzing, and any one of them will blitz, and that was part of his MO, what he did. So I think that's something that they can mix in a little bit more, some corner blitzes. You saw Malcolm Butler blitz from time to time. They might want to do that a little bit more and dial it up in a more timely fashion.
Gotcha. Now, defensively, they do have a few free agents. Daquan Jones, you have Jayon Brown, you have King as well. I'm sorry, and of those three guys, I mean, do you see all of them potentially coming back, or do you see, them moving on and the Titans going in a different direction?
Well, Clowney will be a free agent as well, so that's another one. It's going to be interesting. I don't believe Daquan Jones will be back because I think they will go out and get somebody that could fill that role. A guy at Florida State's Marvin Wilson would be excellent in that role. You take him and put him next to Jeffrey Simmons, and those are problems for opposing offenses. So I'm not sure he'll be back. Desmond King, I think that's a tough one. I think they should try to bring him back just because he's probably their best nickel guy. And as the defense started to get a little bit better, it happened when he started to get further incorporated into the scheme and into the system. And he is one of their best blitzers. I don't know if Kenny Vaccaro is going to be back. So, you want to have at least one of those guys in there to be so good as a blitzer out of that nickel package. Jayon Brown is also interesting. I frankly think he's their best linebacker on the team. and I felt that way for a couple of years now. I got to talk to his new agent down there in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. He wants to go back, but obviously he's not taking a short, and especially getting a new agent. The new group that's representing him, they're not taking a short. So it's going to have to be the right deal. I think he will get a good amount of interest around the league because he is known as one of the top 3-4 inside backers. So I don't know. I mean, if they do let him go, a guy like KJ Britt out of Auburn would be a really good plug and play guy, to kind of mix time in with David Long Jr., who's an outstanding player himself.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to see what they do with Jayon Brown. And I do get the feeling that Daquan Jones will move on. I kind of get the feeling that Daquan Jones may be going further south to, let's say, Atlanta, potentially. But, I could be wrong. But I just get that feeling.
They need the money to do it. They are in trouble, a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you think about him and Grady Jackson together. Woo! Goodness gracious. But question, we had another question from, let's see, we had M Plumber 76. So do you think they will go free agent or draft for defense?
Both. I think they go both. I expect to see them sign, whether it's a Carl Lawson, Trey Hendrickson, Romeo Okwara, that tier, and then double down with someone like a Marcus Golden or a Jordan Jenkins from the Jets. I expect to see two guys free agency wise, and then the draft. I mean, Azeez Ojulari. You can check my Twitter feed. I have recently posted a few things. That guy is complete, and think Yannick Ngakoue, that type of player as far as solid against the run, the pass, but Ojulari, you could drop him back into coverage, and he's someone in the draft. I talked to Mel Kiper about Jalen Phillips as well as Gregory Rousseau, who he did mock to the Titans. Those are two guys. You got there's a bunch, man. Patrick Jones is another guy, a day 2 one, possibly a day 4 guy, and Patrick Johnson out of Tulane. There are a lot of pass rushers, man, edge guys. Rashad Weaver, can mention him. William Bradley King out of Baylor. There's a good amount. This is a deep draft, so I expect to see them add 3 or 4 pass rushers, 3 or 4 edge guys.
Now, with that being said, personnel-wise, I have a question again from someone, from Cortland again, I'm sorry. He said, personnel-wise, does Clowney make a return for cheaper, and is Vaccaro let go for the younger hooker, which I think Vaccaro's let go for the younger hooker, but that's just my thinking. But, and then also we'll get into another question about another free agent, but, definitely, those are 2 questions that Cortland has for you today.
Yeah, well, I think at the right price, Clowney will come back. But the thing that you have to understand is he has an injury issue, right? And I think the best thing that he has going for him is his connection to Mike Brady, right? Because I think a lot of other teams are going to be very questionable. Even the Titans themselves will be questionable about his injury history. He's not going to command $10 million a year. That rest assured, he's not going to get that. So I think at the right price, he will be back, but it just depends on what other teams, are interested in him. As far as the other one about Vaccaro, it's very possible that he is let go. I think really I want to see, and this is something that Chris Sanders and I talked about on the show that we released yesterday. I want to see if Amani Hooker is ready to assume a full-time role. Not on a part-time role, in a spot duty type of situation. He did an awesome job, led the team in interceptions, you know what I mean, and just played solid football. But is that enough to make this team confident enough to let Kenny Vaccaro go? And then in addition to that, do they have enough confidence in Dan Cruikshank to come in and fill that Amani Hooker role? Because you need depth. This is a team that uses safeties a lot. They use 3 safeties on the field very frequently. Cruikshank, in my opinion, is a solid player. He's someone that in 2019, spot duty as a dime DB, kind of playing that role. He filled it pretty well. So I think that's really what it comes down to. I could see for Carl actually not being here anymore. It would be unfortunate because that is he's a tone setter for that defense, and he's come up with big plays, even this past year. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to watch and see what happens there. But let's take a to a different place. Let's talk about the Senior Bowl. Like, uh, a few different players down there, showed up and have showed out. And of course, over the years, players have done their thing down there. Like like Justin Herbert, he came out there and did his thing when he was out there. Slung it around, showed a few play a few personnel, teams that he could actually, do his thing, handle an offense. He showed all of his skills pretty much, and of course the Chargers are benefiting from that right now. What players when you were down there caught your eye?
There was an assortment of players. I really like watching Tyler Wallace. He looked really good. Receiver out of Oklahoma State. He played a lot in the slot. We talked about just making that conversion and having that two-way go. And he said that he's liking that transition, being able to do that more, at least during the week in Alabama. Dwayne Eskridge, he definitely stood out. I think, when you look at him, you're talking about a guy that gets you what we call free yards. Him, Amari Rogers, Kadarius Toney, Demetric Felton. These are all guys that you could get the ball to behind the line of scrimmage, and they'll make it happen. They'll take that and make that into a big play, and that's what you want, those explosive playmakers. I think that's something that's missing from the Titans offense as far as a guy that you could take and just drop in different spots. You want to line them up out wide, go ahead and do that. Put them in the slot, you could do that. In the backfield, you could do that too. In fact, Felton was a running back at UCLA. He worked mostly in the slot in Mobile. So those are some receivers. Edge guys, man. William Bradley King, he definitely stood out to me out of Baylor. I was really impressed by him. Cam Sample out of Tulane. He was more of an interior guy, but when he was out there, he did his thing. Carlos Boogie Basham out of Wake Forest. He was really impressive, winning reps. He and my man Smith out of Tennessee. They were banging. They were going at it, man. There were some good reps there. I mentioned Marvin Wilson. He didn't practice on Thursday, but he was impressive. Cornerback-wise, Keith Taylor out of Washington, very long corner. And I was impressed just by how he moved despite being usually the 6'2 guys. There's not all of them are like Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, who's at Tennessee State now coaching, and have that footwork. I'm not saying Taylor's footwork was that good, but it was solid. As far as he wasn't caught out of position by double moves or even by, quick moves on slants and things like that. He was able to come down and cover that, use his length. So he stood out. Man, there's a bunch of guys. Those guys come to mind quickly. I'm just trying to think of some others. The safety out of UCF, he was really good, number 27. I forget his name, but he had a couple of interceptions. He was always around the football. There was a center also out of Wisconsin Whitewater named Quinn Meaners. Vicious, a ferocious player, man. He went down there, and I think he probably had the biggest impact as far as changing his draft projection. I could see him going day 2 easily now after what he was able to do against other players, of higher stature as far as coming from a bigger school.
Gotcha. Now, here's the $1 million question that a lot of Titans fans would like to know. I know it's early, but the Titans have the 22nd pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. If it were you today, with the 22nd pick in the 2021 Draft, who would you have the Titans selecting?
I mean, that's a very general question. You don't know who's on the board, who's gone. I think if you're looking in that frame, I think Aziz Ujulari is probably the pick that they should make. But again, is Jalen Phillips still there? Is Gregory Rousseau still there? I personally like Ujulari more than Rousseau. You'll find a lot of people who don't. I just think he's a stronger, more stout, solid, all-around player. But I mean, it's in the eye of the beholder. I would say there's a good shot, that Ujulari will be there, and I think he would be the pick. Some will say Joseph Asai out of Texas. I'm not as big on him as others. He's a little stiff to me, and you'll hear Kwity Paye as well, but I think he's going to be going by that time.
Gotcha. And of course, I had this question, and there was Cortland also had this question too. Corey Davis. That's going to be interesting if he comes back or not. I mean, what is it? I noticed at the end of the last game, he was standing on the sideline and he wasn't in. I don't know if there was an injury or anything of that nature.
He was hurt.
He was hurt. Okay, but yeah, it just seemed like you could see he was frustrated or he looked like he was frustrated. He might have been frustrated because he wasn't out there, but
it was more than just being frustrated. Remember, the man lost his brother.
That's true too.
That's what I mean? He lost his brother. So that's a pretty significant thing, and he was very close to his brother. And again, that Packers game, that was on his brother's birthday. There were things beyond football that factored into that. I'm not making excuses for the man, but I think the fact that he just even suited up and played, for me, that was good enough. You know what I mean? Knowing that he suffered such a significant loss.
Definitely, and I definitely don't mean to make that sound small or anything like that. I mean, I know if I lost a sibling and had to continue to do my job on the field, it would be very rough for me to do, and I commend him for doing so. Of course, I just interesting. Just it's going to be interesting to see what he commands on the open market and what happens between him and the Titans, because of course the Titans drafted him very high, and all just looking at his career, he hasn't necessarily reached those lofty expectations that people had for him. So do you think okay, I think we lost the feed, we lost Teron there. I was going to ask him about Corey Davis there, but I think we might have lost Teron there. But I thank him for answering our questions tonight and answering my questions as well, and giving us a better look at the Titans, a little bit deeper look at the Titans than what we would actually see on the surface level. Definitely going to be a big offseason for the Titans. They have offensive coordinator, the new offensive coordinator. They have a new defensive coordinator, and it's just they have some offseason decisions to make. Will they bring guys back? Will they let guys go? It's going to be interesting to watch and see. I mean, definitely going to be something worth paying attention to if you're a Titans fan. There goes Teron. There he goes.
I don't know what happened.
It was having a mind of its own, probably. But I just what I was saying was, as far as Corey Davis, it's going to be interesting to see the level of the market as opposed to if he wants to stay or not, and what all factors go into if he leaves or if he returns as a Tennessee Titan next year. I mean, you have any thoughts on that one in terms of going one way or the other?
I mean, I'm pretty sure they would like to bring him back because they have time invested in him and draft capital. But that's not always like the main reason you bring somebody back. I think more importantly, there's a fit. He settled in as a very nice compliment to A.J. Brown, who is without a doubt the lead receiver on the team. But when all that coverage is rolling that way, Corey Davis is a guy that is well equipped to beat single coverage. And I think that's something that makes him a good fit. Also, just the fact that he's such a solid run blocker, such an impactful player in the run game. When you have Derrick Henry, that's important. So I think they want to bring him back, but like everything, it's going to be the right number. If that thing gets up to like $12 million a year, I'm not sure that they'll bring him back. And that's where someone who I noticed the train is starting to pick up. I've said this over a month ago. Marvin Jones is a player that I think would be an awesome fallback option. He's 31 years old. very effective as a deep pass catcher. His 12 yards average per catch won't really highlight that, but if you watch beyond last year, you will see that he is a deep ball specialist. But he's also a possession guy, and he is willing to mix it up against the run. He should come in at $7 or $8 million a year, a lot cheaper than 12. So I think they could go from Davis to Jones right there and still be all right, and draft a couple guys. Josh Palmer out of Tennessee would be a really good option for them.
I definitely like watching Josh Palmer play. I mean, he's sneaky fast, and he's got hands. So I definitely like watching him play. Well, next thing I want to do is I want to thank you for coming on with me tonight. Definitely was a pleasure. I mean, you dropped a lot of knowledge and a lot of insight that not anyone that just sees from the outside looking in would not be able to see or know. And I just thank you for your time. And I just want to give you the floor if you want to talk about anything you have going on, how people can reach out to you, anything like that at all. The floor is yours.
Well, yeah, I'm on Twitter at @TDavenport_NFL. You could find ESPN.com, click on the NFL page, then team and Titans, subscribe to that. That way you get all ESPN written content that I put up there. In addition to that, make sure you check out Talking with TD. Mention Josh Palmer, mention Patrick Jones. These are guys that we'll have on the show. This upcoming week, we're going to have Felipe Franks on there. We'll have his quarterback coach. So you want a little bit of that SEC quarterback talk? There you go right there. I had Mel Kiper on today. Every week we have Chris Sanders on the show. So definitely make sure you smash that subscribe button and then leave that excellent review. I appreciate each of you for that. And, yeah, man, thanks for having me on, Mike.
Yes, sir, definitely. And one thing I also mentioned is, man, you didn't even talk about the books, man. You didn't even talk about the books.
Oh, I mean, you guys have stuff going on now. Yeah, the books. You always got to have those handy. Got the Carson Wentz song with the Eagles. This is a book that I wrote my first solo publication. Then you have this one here, A Team Makes a Miracle. These are about the Eagles, so I don't, expect to get too much of a response on that one. I understand that you guys are Titans fans, but these ones, Football Love Story, right here. 100 different stories from movers and shakers: John Harbaugh, Steve Smith Sr., Ed Reed, Jen Walter, the first female pro coach. They all share what they love most about football and what did football teach me. This is a publication as well, just sharing the lessons. And Mike, you play football. I know that you've learned lessons from it. I have learned lessons. This is 100 different stories of what people have learned from it. So definitely make sure you guys check that out. Always a pleasure to share the books, man. I'm proud of those, but I was just giving you what was going on now.
Well, yeah, man. I gotta mess around and man, I gotta look in the wallet and see if I can go ahead and buy the books again, man. Just buy the books, man. I gotta go ahead and buy the books. I'll hear you talking about them, and I'm like, I gotta get them. But thank Teron again for coming on, and of course, if you want to reach me at anywhere, you can reach me on Twitter at MikePatton82. You can, of course, watch any of the past shows where we talked about, of course, the offensive lines for the AFC South. We talked about, we talked about the Titans. We talked about the Colts. We talked about the Jaguars. But one team we haven't talked about yet, the Houston Texans. And with all the things going on with Deshaun Watson and the team, we're definitely going to touch on that. Maybe it's next week with another special guest. Maybe it's the week after, but we're for sure going to touch on that. Definitely. I just thank everybody for tuning in. If you can, just go ahead and share the show. Let other people, if you got some AFC South fans, you've got some Titans fans around you, show them the show. Let them see it. Let them comment. Hey, I'm always up for a good debate, a good conversation. I thank you for all that tuned in. Let's see, M. Plummer, Ted, Cortland, I mean, I just thank you all for tuning in. We got a guy jumping in saying "Go Cowboys," but hey, this is the AFC South show, not the NFC East. But anyway, thank you for tuning in too. But I just thank everybody for tuning in. Uh, Definitely was a good show, and I have another one planned for you next week. You just have to stay tuned in to see who's coming on and who's going to be expressing their knowledge and their experiences with all that they do. So thank you all for tuning in, and you all have a great night. And guess what, y'all? We might actually have a show on Sunday, which will be the Super Bowl Sunday show. Going to break down all the positions. I'm pretty sure you don't want to miss that one. And hey, if you want to come on and show up and be a guest, hey, let me know. Don't be ashamed to let me know. Y'all have a great night.